Welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep into the world of Buddhism today.
Yeah.
Not just the surface level stuff, though.
No.
We're looking at a whole collection of texts and writings,
Yeah.
really getting into some serious deep cuts on Buddhist thought.
And it's a rich tradition, a lot to unpack, right?
Oh, yeah.
We'll be looking at the life of the Buddha, key concepts like nirvana and karma,
Oh, yeah.
practices like mindfulness and meditation. There's a lot to explore here.
I'm really curious about nirvana.
Yeah.
Is that something attainable in this lifetime, or is it more of a far-off ideal?
Right.
And what about the Buddha himself? Was he just a regular guy who kind of stumbled onto the secrets of the universe, or was there something more to him?
Well, let's start with the man himself, Siddhartha Gautama. He's the historical Buddha,
Oh,
the
yeah.
one who started it all.
Right.
That these texts we're diving into.
Yeah.
They describe him in some pretty interesting ways. For example, some Buddhist schools believe there are actually different types of Buddhas,
Wait.
not just Siddhartha.
Multiple Buddhas.
Kind of. There's this idea of perfectly awakened Buddhas, like Siddhartha,
Okay.
who achieve complete enlightenment. But there are also those who reach a lesser form of awakening, still following in the Buddha's footsteps. And then Vajrayana Buddhism, they take it even further with the concept of Buddha lands, basically different realms where other Buddhas exist.
Whoa.
It's a pretty wild concept.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
So how did Siddhartha, this regular guy,
Right.
become the Buddha? Did he have some divine revelation, or was it more of a gradual process?
Well, his story's fascinating. He was born a prince,
Okay.
living a life of total luxury.
Yeah.
But at 29, he decided to give it all up.
Wow.
His wife, his newborn child, all the comforts of palace life to seek a deeper truth.
Okay.
It's known as the Great Renunciation.
I can't even imagine giving up everything like that.
Yeah.
What prompted such a drastic change?
He was driven by this profound desire to understand the nature of suffering and to find a way to end it, not just for himself, but for everyone. He began his journey by studying with various spiritual teachers, mastering advanced meditative states. He even reached a state of nothingness,
Really?
where all thoughts and sensations ceased. Imagine experiencing pure emptiness.
I guess that would make worldly possessions seem pretty insignificant.
Exactly. But even in these profound states, he realized something was missing. He hadn't achieved complete liberation from the cycle of rebirth, which is the ultimate goal in Buddhism.
So even though he was experiencing these incredible states of consciousness, it wasn't enough.
Right. It's like he was searching for lasting peace, not just temporary bliss.
Okay.
So he went to the other extreme, trying to achieve enlightenment through intense physical deprivation. He basically starved himself
Wow.
and practiced extreme breath control for 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is. And surprisingly, it didn't work.
Really?
He realized that punishing his body wasn't the answer either. This experience led him to the concept of the middle way,
Okay.
avoiding extremes,
Yeah.
finding a balance between indulgence and deprivation.
Makes sense. So it's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
But how do you actually do that? How do you walk this middle way and find lasting peace?
Well, it's about understanding the root of suffering,
Okay.
what Buddhists call dukkha.
Dukkha.
It encompasses all forms of pain, dissatisfaction, and unease that we experience in life.
Yeah.
And this is where the Four Noble Truths come in. They're like the cornerstone of Buddhist thought.
Okay. Lay those truths on me.
All right, the first truth is simply that suffering exists. Life inevitably involves disappointment, loss, illness, and eventually death. We all experience these things.
I've definitely had my fair share of suffering. What's the second truth?
The second truth gets to the cause of suffering,
Okay.
which Buddhism identifies as craving and attachment.
Mm-hmm.
We cling to things, to people, to ideas of how things should be,
Yeah.
and when those things change, which they inevitably do, we suffer.
I can see how clinging to things would lead to suffering.
Yeah.
Like, I get anxious just thinking about losing my phone.
Right.
So if craving and attachment are the problem, how do we stop doing that?
That brings us to the third truth.
Okay.
The suffering can end.
Okay.
The idea is if we can uproot craving and attachment, we can break free from the cycle of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about suppressing our desires. It's about understanding their true nature
Okay.
and cultivating a different way of relating to them.
That makes sense, but how do we actually do that? Is there some sort of step-by-step guide to ending suffering?
There is. That's where the fourth and final noble truth comes in. The truth of the path to the cessation of suffering.
Okay.
And that path is known as the Eightfold Path.
The Eightfold Path. That sounds almost mystical.
Yeah.
What exactly is it?
It's a set of 8 interconnected principles that guide us towards liberation.
Okay.
It covers right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
So it's about cultivating wisdom,
Yeah.
ethical conduct,
Yes.
and mental discipline.
Exactly. And each element supports the others. For example, right understanding helps us to see things clearly,
Hmm.
which then informs our thoughts, speech, and actions.
Okay.
And right mindfulness helps us stay present and aware so we can make choices that are aligned with the path.
This eightfold path thing is starting to sound like a blueprint for a good life, even outside of a religious context.
It definitely has universal applications.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to be a set of rigid rules,
Okay.
but a framework for living with more awareness, compassion, and skill.
Hmm. It's important to note that Buddhism wasn't always a monolithic entity, though, right?
Right.
Like, as the teaching spread, different schools of thought emerged, each with its own interpretation and emphasis.
Exactly.
So like different branches of the same tree.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
What are some of the key differences between these schools?
Well, 2 of the most prominent schools we'll be looking at are Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. Theravada is often considered the older tradition, focusing on individual liberation from suffering through rigorous study and practice. It's the path of the monk who renounces worldly possessions to dedicate their life to meditation and study.
That's a pretty serious commitment.
It is.
What about the Mahayana school? What's their take on things?
Well, Mahayana Buddhism emerged later
Okay.
and viewed the earlier teachings as a foundation for a more expansive understanding.
Okay.
They introduced the concept of upaya kashelya, skillful means,
Upayakasha.
suggesting that the Buddha tailored his teachings to the listener's capacity.
So it's like the Buddha was a cosmic teacher, kind of adjusting the lesson plan for different students.
Precisely. And Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes the potential for all beings to attain Buddhahood, not just a select few.
Wow.
This ties into one of their key concepts, emptiness, or shunyata.
Emptiness.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit depressing.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
actually quite liberating. Emptiness refers to the understanding that everything ourselves, the objects around us, even our thoughts and feelings, they all lack inherent existence.
Hmm.
They arise and pass away due to a web of interconnected causes and conditions, like links in a chain.
So it's not that things don't exist,
Right.
but they're constantly changing and interconnected.
Exactly.
Okay.
And by understanding this, we can loosen our grip on the idea of a fixed, independent self
Yeah.
and start to see the world in a new light.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. So we've got the historical Buddha, different schools of thought, the
Yeah.
Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path,
Right.
and this mind-bending concept of emptiness.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, we've only just scratched the surface.
Really?
There are many more layers to uncover,
Oh, I like that.
including some aspects of Buddhism that might seem a bit controversial.
Oh, I love a good controversy. What kind of things are we talking about?
One of the big ones is rebirth.
Oh,
It's a central concept in Buddhism, but it's not about a soul being reborn in the way some other religions describe it.
okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this Buddhist version of rebirth.
Well, it's all about understanding what exactly is being reborn
Right.
and what role our actions play in shaping future lives.
Oh, let's dive in.
All right, but first, let's take a moment to really appreciate the complexity of what we've covered so far.
Yeah,
It's a lot to process.
it definitely is.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for more.
Great. So let's delve into this idea of rebirth. It's definitely one of those concepts that makes Buddhism stand out and can feel a little mind-boggling at first.
I'm ready for the mind-boggling.
Yeah,
We've already touched on the idea that there's no permanent soul in Buddhism.
right,
So what exactly is being reborn if it's not a soul?
right.
And what about heaven and hell? Do those exist in Buddhist thought?
Those are great questions. Instead of a permanent soul, Buddhism talks about a stream of consciousness that carries on from one life to the next.
Okay.
Think of it like a wave in the ocean. Each wave is distinct, but it's also part of a larger interconnected flow.
So it's not a static me that's being reborn, but rather a constantly evolving process.
Exactly. And what shapes this process is karma.
Okay.
The actions we perform in this life and previous lives. Think of it like planting seeds. The kind of seeds we sow determine the kind of fruit we'll reap.
So every action we take,
Yeah.
even every thought we have, is planting a karmic seed. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering.
Okay.
By understanding karma, we can make choices that lead to more happiness and less suffering, both for ourselves and others.
Okay.
Not about being perfect,
Yeah.
but about being mindful of the impact our actions have on ourselves and the world around us.
That makes sense. It's like we're constantly shaping our future selves, even across lifetimes.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about the afterlife. What happens when someone dies, according to Buddhist texts?
The Theravada school, which we discussed earlier, emphasizes the immediate consequences of karma. So at the moment of death, the stream of consciousness, carrying those karmic imprints, takes rebirth in another realm.
So there's no in-between state, like a purgatory or a waiting room.
Yeah.
It's straight into the next life.
Pretty much. And the realm of rebirth, whether it's the human realm, the animal realm, or even a heavenly or hellish realm,
Right.
is determined by the weight of our past actions.
Okay, so it's like a cosmic reset button, but with karmic baggage.
Exactly. But the Mahayana school, with its emphasis on skillful means, presents a more nuanced view.
You mentioned before that Mahayana Buddhism often describes things differently than Theravada Buddhism.
Right.
What's their take on the afterlife?
Well, they describe intermediate states,
Okay.
periods of transition between death and rebirth,
Ah.
and they also suggest the possibility of communication with those who have passed on.
So it's not a clean break,
Right.
but a more gradual transition.
Yeah.
Are there specific practices or rituals that help people navigate this transition?
Yes, many Buddhist traditions have rituals and practices aimed at guiding the deceased through these intermediate states.
Correct.
For example, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is an elaborate system of practices known as the Bardo Thodol, often called the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead. That sounds intense. What's the purpose of these practices?
It's about helping the consciousness navigate these transitions with awareness and clarity.
Okay.
Think of it like a spiritual roadmap for the afterlife.
Yeah.
Helping the deceased recognize their true nature and avoid getting caught in unhelpful states of mind.
So it's like giving the deceased a spiritual compass to help them on their journey. That's pretty amazing.
It is, and it highlights the interconnectedness of life and death in Buddhist thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an end, but a transformation,
Right.
a continuation of the journey towards awakening.
I'm starting to see how rebirth fits into the broader picture of Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not just about being reborn over and over again, but about using each life as an opportunity to grow, learn, and ultimately break free from suffering.
Exactly. The concept of rebirth is closely tied to the Four Noble Truths.
Okay.
It's a reminder that suffering is part of life as long as we're bound to the cycle of birth and death.
Right.
But it also offers hope. Each rebirth presents a chance to create positive karma, weaken our attachments, and move closer to liberation.
So it's not a fatalistic view of being trapped in an endless cycle,
No.
but rather an empowering reminder that we have the ability to shape our own destiny, even across lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's like we're always evolving,
Yeah.
learning from our experiences and
Mhm.
carrying that wisdom forward.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that's where the Eightfold Path, which we discussed earlier, becomes so important.
Right.
It provides a practical framework for cultivating wholesome qualities and purifying our actions.
Right. The Eightfold Path was all about right understanding, right action, right mindfulness, and so on.
Exactly.
How does it connect to this idea of shaping our destiny across lifetimes?
Well, by practicing the Eightfold Path, we're not just living a good life now,
Okay.
but we're also planting the seeds for a better future, both in this life and beyond.
Okay.
It's like we're creating a positive momentum that carries us forward on the path to liberation.
So the choices we make today have ripple effects that extend far beyond this present moment. It makes you think twice about that snarky comment you were about to make, doesn't it?
Exactly. Mindfulness, which is a key element of the Eightfold Path,
Yeah.
helps us become more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Mm-hmm.
This awareness gives us more control over how we shape our karma.
So it's not just about what we do, but also about the intention behind our actions.
Right.
That adds another layer of complexity to the whole karma thing.
It does. And the texts we're exploring emphasize that skillful actions performed with wholesome intentions generate positive karma,
Okay.
leading to greater happiness and spiritual progress.
It sounds like a continuous feedback loop.
It is.
Our actions shape our karma.
Yeah.
Our karma influences our rebirth. And each rebirth presents a new opportunity to refine our actions and continue the journey.
It's a dynamic process of growth and evolution, constantly unfolding.
Right.
And that's where the concept of rebirth becomes truly transformative.
Yeah.
It's not just a belief,
Okay.
but a framework for understanding the interconnectedness of life, death, and our actions.
It's definitely a lot to wrap our heads around, but it's incredibly thought-provoking.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier this idea of Buddha lands,
Yeah.
these pure realms presided over by different Buddhas.
Right.
How did those fit into this whole picture of rebirth?
Buddha lands are fascinating. They're often depicted as celestial paradises,
Yeah.
but they're not physical places in the way we typically understand them.
Okay.
They represent states of consciousness, levels of spiritual attainment that exist beyond our ordinary perception.
So they're like spiritual dimensions.
Yeah, kind of.
And what about these Buddhas who reside in these realms? Are they like cosmic overlords or something?
Not quite. Think of them more like archetypes of enlightenment, embodying different aspects of wisdom and compassion.
Okay.
They're like beacons of inspiration, guiding beings towards awakening.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But how do we get to these Buddha lands? Is it like winning a cosmic lottery? Or is there a more intentional path?
It's definitely not about luck.
Okay.
Accessing these realms requires cultivating specific qualities and practices.
Okay.
For example, in Pure Land Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
the focus is on developing unwavering faith in Amitabha Buddha
Amitabha Buddha. Okay.
and aspiring to be reborn in his Pure Land.
Amitabha Buddha. That name rings a bell. Is he like a celebrity Buddha or something?
He's definitely one of the most popular and widely revered Buddhas in East Asian Buddhism.
Okay.
His Pure Land is described as a realm of bliss and enlightenment, free from suffering.
Wow.
It's a powerful image that inspires many practitioners.
So it's not about escaping this world for some distant paradise.
No.
But rather about purifying our minds and hearts to create those conditions within ourselves.
Yeah.
Like if we can cultivate that level of peace and clarity here and now,
Yeah.
we're essentially creating our own personal Buddha land.
Exactly. The concept of Buddha lands offers a glimpse of what's possible when we transcend our limitations and realize our full potential.
Okay.
It's a vision of liberation that motivates us to practice and cultivate the qualities needed to reach those higher realms.
Right. But it's important to remember that Buddhism isn't just about intellectual understanding.
Right.
It's a lived experience.
Yeah.
A path of transformation that unfolds through practice and direct insight.
Yeah.
So it's not just about reading the text and having these mind-blowing conversations,
Yeah.
but about embodying these principles in our daily lives.
Precisely. And that embodiment involves cultivating certain qualities that are central to the Buddhist path. Qualities like compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom.
Okay.
These qualities form the foundation for a truly fulfilling and meaningful life.
Okay, let's talk about those qualities.
Okay.
What role do they play in this grand scheme of things, and how do we even begin to cultivate them?
Well, compassion and loving kindness are at the heart of Buddhist practice.
Mm-hmm.
They're seen as essential for personal transformation, for creating a more just and compassionate world, and ultimately for realizing our interconnectedness with all beings.
So it's not just about seeking individual enlightenment,
Right.
but about extending that compassion outward to all beings,
Mhm.
kind of like paying it forward on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. The Bodhisattva ideal, which is prominent in Mahayana Buddhism, exemplifies this.
Okay.
A bodhisattva is someone who postpones their own full awakening to help all other beings achieve liberation.
That's pretty selfless.
It is.
Makes you wonder if that's even achievable for us mere mortals.
Right.
Are we all capable of that level of compassion?
Well, Buddhism teaches that the seeds of compassion and wisdom already reside within each of us.
Okay.
It's about nurturing those seeds,
Yeah.
allowing them to blossom through practice and understanding. And practices like meditation can be incredibly powerful tools for cultivating these qualities.
So it's about tapping into our innate potential for goodness and extending it outward to the world. But how does that connect to the idea of emptiness, which we talked about earlier? It seems like those concepts might be at odds with each other.
They're actually deeply interconnected.
Really?
Because things lack inherent existence, meaning they're constantly changing and interconnected,
Right.
we can start to see ourselves in others,
Mhm.
and others in ourselves.
Okay.
This understanding naturally fosters a deep sense of empathy and compassion for all beings.
So by recognizing our interconnectedness, we're more likely to act with kindness and understanding towards others because their well-being is ultimately tied to our own.
It's a profound shift in perspective that can transform how we relate to the world and to each other.
I'm starting to see how compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom aren't just abstract concepts,
Yeah.
but essential qualities for navigating life with more skill and awareness. They're like the guiding stars on the path to awakening.
They are, and these qualities aren't static.
Right.
They're developed and refined through practice,
Okay.
just like a muscle being strengthened through exercise.
So it's an ongoing process, a journey of cultivating these qualities day by day.
Right.
But what about when we face challenges and setbacks? How do we stay committed to the path when things get tough?
That's where another key quality comes in. Patience.
Patience. You mean like the kind you need when you're stuck in traffic or waiting for your internet to load?
Well, yes, but also on a much deeper level.
Okay.
Patience in Buddhism is about recognizing that the path to awakening is a gradual process.
Right.
It requires a willingness to endure difficulties with grace and equanimity, knowing that challenges are an inevitable part of growth.
So it's about accepting that things unfold in their own time, even on the spiritual path.
Yes.
No shortcuts to enlightenment.
No shortcuts. But that doesn't mean we passively wait for things to happen.
Right.
It's about cultivating a steady and persistent effort, knowing that even small steps forward contribute to our overall progress.
So patience isn't about being passive, but about embracing the journey with a calm and steady mind, even when things get tough.
Exactly. And this brings us to another essential quality: wisdom.
Okay, bring on the wisdom. What does that actually look like?
Yeah.
And how do we cultivate it?
It's about understanding the impermanent nature of reality, the causes of suffering, and the path to liberation.
Okay.
It's cultivated through study, reflection, and practice.
Okay.
The teachings offer a framework for understanding reality,
Mm-hmm.
but it's through our own experiences and insights that wisdom truly blossoms.
So it's about integrating those teachings into our lived experience
Right.
and letting them guide our actions and perceptions.
Precisely. And this process is often supported by the guidance of spiritual teachers, the Sangha, the Buddhist community, and the texts themselves.
Right. We touched earlier on the importance of spiritual teachers and the community.
Yes.
What role do they play in cultivating these qualities and navigating the path?
Well, spiritual teachers provide guidance, instruction, and support.
Okay.
They've often walked the path themselves
Right.
and can offer valuable insights based on their own experiences. Think of them as mentors on the spiritual journey.
So it's like having a spiritual coach to help you along the way.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And what about the Sangha? What does the community offer?
Well, the Sangha offers a sense of belonging, support, and shared understanding.
Okay.
It's a place where you can connect with others who are on a similar path,
Yeah.
share your experiences, and learn from each other.
Right.
It's a reminder that we're not alone on this journey.
It sounds like a blend of personal practice and communal support.
Yeah.
Definitely more nuanced than the image of a solitary monk meditating on a mountaintop.
Buddhism is full of surprises. It challenges us to question our assumptions and to delve deeper into the nature of reality, ourselves, and our interconnectedness with all beings.
It's been an incredible journey so far.
It has.
We've covered so much ground. The life of the Buddha, core Buddhist concepts, the intricacies of rebirth and karma, the importance of compassion and wisdom.
Right.
And we've talked about how all of this is ultimately about cultivating a way of life that leads to greater happiness and fulfillment.
Beautifully said. But we're not done yet.
Right.
We still need to explore some of the more practical aspects of Buddhism, like mindfulness and meditation.
Yes. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
These practices seem to have exploded in popularity lately, but I'm curious to learn more about their roots in Buddhist tradition
Right.
and how they can be applied in our modern lives.
All right, let's dive into the world of mindfulness and meditation.
All right, we've been talking about this concept of awakening and the qualities that help us get there.
Right.
But how do we actually put all of this into practice? What are the tools and techniques that Buddhism offers for cultivating a more awakened way of being?
That's where mindfulness and meditation come in. These practices are like the training ground for developing the qualities we've been discussing: compassion, wisdom, patience, and a deeper understanding of reality.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness lately.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It seems to be everywhere these days. Apps, books, even corporate workshops.
Right.
But I'm curious about its roots in Buddhist tradition. What exactly is mindfulness?
Yeah.
And how is it different from meditation?
Well, mindfulness in the Buddhist context is about paying attention to the present moment with an open and non-judgmental awareness.
Okay.
It's about observing your thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting carried away by them.
Right.
Imagine your mind is like a busy highway with thoughts and emotions constantly rushing by.
Okay.
Mindfulness is like stepping off that highway onto the side of the road and simply observing the traffic without getting caught up in it.
So it's about creating space between ourselves and our thoughts and emotions.
Exactly. And this awareness can be cultivated through various practices, both formal and informal.
What are some examples of formal mindfulness practices?
Formal mindfulness practices include things like mindful breathing, walking meditation, and body scan meditations.
Okay.
These practices involve intentionally focusing your attention on specific sensations.
Okay.
For example, in mindful breathing, you simply observe the sensation of your breath as it enters and leaves your body.
It sounds so simple.
It is, but it's not always easy.
Right.
Our minds tend to wander.
Yeah, for sure.
But the practice is about gently guiding your attention back to the breath whenever you notice it has strayed.
What about informal mindfulness? Can we practice mindfulness in our everyday lives even when we're not formally meditating?
Absolutely. Informal mindfulness involves bringing that same quality of attention to everyday activities.
Okay.
It could be as simple as paying attention to the sensations of washing the dishes, the taste of your food as you eat, or the feeling of your feet on the ground as you walk.
So it's about bringing awareness to the present moment, no matter what we're doing.
Exactly. It's about waking up from the autopilot of our habitual patterns and really experiencing life as it unfolds.
That makes mindfulness seem a lot more accessible.
Yeah.
It's not just about sitting on a cushion in a quiet room.
Right.
It's about bringing a sense of presence and awareness to every moment of our lives.
And that's where the connection to meditation comes in.
Okay.
Mindfulness is often seen as the foundation of meditation practice. It's the starting point for cultivating deeper states of concentration and insight.
Okay, so how does meditation fit into all of this? Is it just about relaxation and stress reduction? Or is there something more to it?
Meditation in the Buddhist context goes beyond simple relaxation.
Okay.
It's a systematic training of the mind,
Mhm.
a way to cultivate beneficial qualities like concentration, clarity, compassion, and equanimity. It's like a mental gym for developing a more skillful and resilient mind.
So we're talking about mental fitness training for the spiritual path.
Exactly. And just like with physical training, there are different types of meditation, each with its own unique benefits and techniques.
What are some of the main types of meditation in Buddhism?
One common type is samatha vipassana meditation.
Okay.
It involves cultivating both calm and insight. Samatha, or tranquility meditation, is all about developing a calm and focused mind.
Mm-hmm.
A classic example of this is focusing on the breath,
Yeah.
like we talk about with mindful breathing.
Right.
By anchoring your attention to a single object, you allow thoughts and distractions to gradually settle, like sediment sinking to the bottom of a lake.
So you're essentially training your mind to stay focused, like building mental muscle.
Yes. And as you develop this ability to focus,
Okay.
you create a foundation for vipassana, or insight meditation.
What's the difference between samatha and vipassana?
Vipassana builds upon the calmness cultivated in samatha and uses it to develop clear seeing into the nature of reality.
Okay.
It involves observing phenomena, thoughts, feelings, sensations, even external objects, with a detached and discerning awareness.
Okay.
Imagine you're a scientist observing an experiment.
You're not trying to change or judge the results. You're
Yeah.
simply observing them with a curious and open mind.
So by calming the mind through samatha meditation, you create the space to observe your inner and outer world more objectively.
Exactly. And through this process of observation, Vipassana meditation helps us see the impermanent, interconnected, and ultimately selfless nature of all things.
Wow.
It helps us see through the illusions that create suffering.
It sounds like samatha and vipassana work together,
They do.
each supporting the other on the path to awakening.
They do. And the beautiful thing about these practices is that they're not just for monks and nuns.
Right.
They're accessible to anyone who wants to cultivate a more peaceful, joyful, and awakened way of being.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
But for someone like me who's just starting out with these practices, it all seems a bit overwhelming. Any tips for beginners?
Start small. Don't try to do too much too soon.
Okay.
Even a few minutes of mindful breathing each day can make a difference.
And don't get discouraged if your mind wanders. That's perfectly normal. Just gently guide your attention back to the object of your focus.
Right.
It's like training a puppy.
Yeah.
It takes time and patience. But with consistent practice, you'll start to see results.
Patience seems to be a recurring theme here.
It is. And consistency is key.
Right.
The more you practice, the more natural these qualities will become.
Okay.
It's like learning any new skill. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
So it's not about being perfect, but about showing up consistently and making an effort.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There are countless resources available to support you: teachers, books, online communities, and meditation apps.
Right.
Find what works for you and experiment. The most important thing is to find a practice that resonates with you and that you can commit to.
It's been an incredible exploration. We've covered so much ground: the life of the Buddha, core Buddhist concepts, the complexities of rebirth and karma, the
Hmm?
power of mindfulness and meditation,
Yeah.
and the importance of cultivating qualities like compassion, wisdom, and patience. It's clear that Buddhism is more than just a religion or a philosophy.
Hmm.
It's a way of life, a path of ongoing transformation and awakening that's available to all of us.
Beautifully said. And it's a journey that's worth taking.
Yeah,
The insights and practices of Buddhism offer profound benefits for individuals and for society as a whole.
absolutely.
They can help us live more skillfully, compassionately, and joyfully, creating a more peaceful and harmonious world for ourselves and for generations to come.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Buddhism. We hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more.
May all beings be well, happy, and free.
Until next time, keep diving deep.